Be ready! That was the motto of the Boy Scouts. The Scout Act was different. The law stated that a Boy Scout must be reliable, loyal, helpful, friendly, polite, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and respectful, and also naive, apparently, stupid, idiot, trusting. Nick had no other answers after checking the email on his wife's iPhone. He usually didn't look at anything on her phone at all, and she knew that very well, so she didn't bother to use any additional protection. After all, he was a Boy Scout. He didn't invade anyone's privacy. But Nick's wife was leaving town in a few weeks, and Nick was trying to remember the name of her hotel. She told him about it before, but he didn't pay attention and wanted to avoid an argument about why he didn't pay attention. These debates have become a bit more frequent lately. The trip would be their longest time apart since their wedding 5 years ago, and Nick had been thinking about doing something romantic, like sending flowers. After all, what better way to show the woman he loves how much he loves her than to send her flowers when she was several thousand miles away in the city of love, Paris? It was the city of love, okay, but he wasn't who she was going to love there. No, it had to be Dwayne, who was also going on a trip. After entering the password to his wife's phone, the date of their wedding, Nick found himself reading one of the non-work-related emails his wife and Dwayne had exchanged over the past few weeks. They talked about walking along the Champs-Élysées at night, then taking a boat ride on the Seine in the moonlight, and then making wonderful love all night. Almost as surprising as the affair itself was the fact that Nick's wife Linda and her lover Dwayne exchanged messages using their work email accounts. She should have known better. So does Dwayne. Like Nick, Linda was a lawyer. Dwayne was a paralegal at Linda's firm. All three have conducted extensive document analysis in major litigation cases where huge teams of lawyers and paralegals have read every one of the hundreds of thousands of emails generated or being considered for document discovery proceedings. The story was always that one or two idiots had an affair, and the lawyers then tried to figure out whether the affair had anything to do with the case, and if so, how to limit the damage. The truth is that the reason Nick didn't pay attention when Linda told him about the trip and the name of the hotel the team would be using was because something strange was going on. Nick didn't know what it was at the time, but his instinct made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. 5 years as a lawyer, listening to clients lie and listening to lawyers scrupulously avoid lying by not telling everything had sharpened his listening skills. And something was wrong when Linda first told him about the trip. A very boring arbitration process that would keep them so busy that they wouldn't even be able to enjoy the sights. She said this without looking at him at all, and too frivolous. She knew that Paris was one of Nick's favorite cities and they always talked about going there together because Linda had never been there. So Nick found her answer strange, but he didn't even imagine such a worst-case scenario. The email line he was looking at now was a stiletto stabbed straight into his heart. "Why don't you just get rid of the Boy Scout so we can spend more time together without worrying?" Dwayne wrote this last night. "I feel safe with him," Linda answered. "So why are you having fun with me behind his back every chance you get? You do it better." Nick had no idea what he was going to do at this point, other than forward all correspondence to his address and print out the email exchange on the printer, just in case. No doubt, as an experienced lawyer, his first instinct was to preserve the evidence. After printing out the emails and putting them away, Nick began to think. He definitely knew what he wanted to do. He needed to think before he hurt anyone. This thinking is what made him a lawyer. He was paid to use his brains, not his brawn. And he had to think about it quickly because Linda was out for a run and would be back soon. But before he could think, he needed to finish the mission and find a hotel. However, this would not be for sending flowers. He didn't know why he would need this information, but he just knew he needed it. Perhaps as a target, close to the Eiffel Tower. About a 5-minute walk from the International Chamber of Commerce, where Linda and Dwayne will be working on their arbitration case with the rest of the team, at least when the two lovers have some free time. Once he found the hotel, he had to quickly do a computer search on Virginia divorce law. He remembered some things from the bar exam 5 years ago, but it was always good to check. Adultery was grounds for divorce and could affect issues such as alimony and division of property. But the accusation of adultery also had its own nuances. One of them was connivance. Finding out about the adultery and then voluntarily resuming sexual relations and continuing to live together was her defense. So, he needed to get out of the house, and quickly. And there should be no confrontation. Not yet. He fully intended to hit her with complete shock and awe without any unknowns thrown into the mix. He was going to dominate the battle space for the rest of this marriage, which meant he would have to lie. Inconsistent with the Boy Scout law, but it was war. After all, it was Churchill who said, "Truth is so valuable in wartime that it must always be accompanied by a bodyguard of lies." Nick's lies would serve a higher purpose now. In any case, none of them were under oath. He went up to the master bedroom and began to pack his things. He finished quickly and placed his suitcases by the front door. He had almost finished gathering the important documents he needed: bank and credit card statements, 401k and IRA statements, car titles, pay stubs, mortgage, and Linda's latest student loan balance when she returned from her run. He heard her in the kitchen as he rose from his basement office. He decided to look exhausted and out of sorts when he saw his wife. Her shoulder-length brown hair was pulled back into a ponytail. She looked good. It's a pity that she was disgusting in his eyes. He already knew that love was dead. "You know, I'm going to Paris," he said with a grim smile. The color drained from Linda's face. Her blue eyes turned pale. "What?" "Paris, Virginia." Her shocked expression quickly disappeared. "Sven just called," Nick continued. "We are testifying in an insurance case and we must prepare a witness. Apparently we just lost the motion to compel. The judge is pissed, and the entire investigation timeline is in chaos. I'm going to be on the road for a few weeks, although I'll probably have the opportunity to stop by from time to time to visit." "Poor baby," Linda said with an appropriate expression of concern. "Maybe your company is hiring. I would prefer to go to your Paris," Nick said, and saw concern appear on her face again. But then she grinned. "Send me your resume. Maybe you have the right amount of experience for us to consider you." It was a joke. Linda's law firm ranked higher in the rankings than Nick's. Then, perhaps with some guilt, she made a move as if she was going to hug him. But Nick turned and returned to his office before she could close the gap. The visions of him slapping her in the face were coming back, and he wasn't sure he could keep them under control. Back upstairs, Linda asked what he wanted for dinner. "I can't stay for dinner. I'll grab something on the way. Sven is going crazy and wants me to hit the road immediately." He spoke, bustling around the kitchen. Linda followed him to the door, looking a little worried. As he grabbed his suitcases and headed for the door, she pursed her lips for a goodbye kiss. "Sorry, I think I may have caught a cold. This morning I have a sore throat. Maybe it's an allergy, but I don't want you to catch anything." Linda followed him to the car as he loaded it. "When will you be back?" "Probably not before Friday. We're going to Roanoke after Paris. Then next week we have to go to Baltimore." Perhaps he was becoming even more paranoid, but he thought he could hear the gears of her brain turning as he watched her avert her eyes, as if imagining how his absence would open up some unexpected possibilities for her. Waving goodbye, he backed out of the driveway. He hoped she would simply assume that he was busy with work and annoyed that he had been called on Saturday. His acting couldn't handle much more at the moment, but he suspected that she was already planning to invite Dwayne over. Nick drove until he came to a nearby shopping center with a coffee shop. Like most lawyers, he thought better by putting it down on paper. As he finished his coffee, he began to make a list of things that needed to be done. He paused for a moment to realize that he had never thought about reconciliation. That wasn't even an option. There will only be retribution. The only question was the degree of retribution. The ringing tone of his phone interrupted him. He didn't recognize the number. "Yes?" he answered impatiently. "Mr. Buford? I'm Sam Granger. I don't think we've met, but I'll get straight to the point. I got your number from the internet. I'm in the business of buying old houses and tearing them down to build mansions. I know. Everyone hates what I do, but they don't hate me as much when I give them a check. Granger spoke so fast that Nick didn't have time to react other than to think that the house wasn't old. It was cozy. And what the hell? He started talking about tearing it down, but then his rational mind took over. And, well, I'd like to buy your house so I can tear it down. I would suggest building a shopping center, but I can never guarantee a timeline for new construction, especially with county permits and all. I make all my profit by getting these deals done quickly, and I think I can give you a very good price if you and your wife are interested in selling. Nick had a hard time keeping a Grinch-like smile from spreading across his face. Linda chose their house just before they got married. It was an old ranch, but it had a beautiful yard that was right next to an area of woods with a creek running through it. It was close to major highways, but secluded enough to be peaceful. What absolutely convinced her was the treehouse in the yard across from the master bedroom window. She loved that it was a home ready for children. Nick simply loved the price and the fact that it was only 20 minutes from the main parking lot of the subway system. That and a 30-minute train ride to work made moving to the area quite convenient. Mr. Granger, I will be away for the next few days, so I cannot guarantee access to the property. Call me Sam. I don't need to see it inside. Like I said, it's a wreck, and I've already checked the outside of the house. Can you meet on Sunday morning, Sam? Certainly. By the way, I will probably close the deal myself with my wife's power of attorney. She is very busy with work-related matters these days. No problem. I'll give you the form we use. Nick noted the address and began to see the outline of the plan. She felt safe with her Boy Scout, didn't she? This is because Linda didn't know that good old Lord Baden-Powell was using military intelligence as a model for what would become his boys' movement. Skills such as stealth, cunning, and self-confidence. In other words, ambushes. She'll never see what happens next until it's too late. But first, reconnaissance. To do this, he put his empty coffee cup on the table and went out to the car to get some privacy. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. Frank, he asked when the call was answered. I need a favor, and I need it now. Frank Barry was a private detective. During his 5 years of corporate legal work, Nick made it a point to also do pro bono work to help poor people with their legal problems. This corresponded to his ideas about the life of a worthy person. And what's more, it gave him real-life experience in court, something his regular job didn't usually provide. One of his law school classmates recommended that Frank help with a nasty divorce case involving a stepfather who had sexually abused his stepdaughter. Frank's evidence got the guy released when the police's lackadaisical response failed, and that evidence led to a quick divorce. Frank listened as Nick explained what he had learned. And you think your wife is going to put him in your bed tonight? Is she really that arrogant? She became very arrogant. She was one of the top students in her law school class. He thinks he can't make a mistake. I do it myself. I owe you. This Rivera divorce case brought me all kinds of good publicity. The phone rings constantly. I appreciate it, Frank, Nick said. By the way, there's a treehouse in the backyard that you might want to use. Its windows look directly into the master bedroom, and she likes to do things with the curtains open. It used to drive me crazy. But whatever started her engine was accepted, you know? You can get there by crossing the forest and jumping over the stream after dark. No fences and no dogs around. There is a service road on the other side where you can park. Thank you. If you don't mind, I'm going to hide a camera outside, pointing it at the front of the house, to keep track of who comes and goes and when. Great. And you're using Harry for a divorce, right? I'm guessing you want a divorce. Yes and yes. Fine. I know how much he likes the affidavit and the reporting process. If you're right, we'll find out pretty soon. Nick then called Harry. Is this about the law school reunion, Nick? I have already received 5 calls about contributing to their fund. No, I want to hire you. Linda cheats, and I want to burn this bitch. After Nick filled him in, Harry said, Come tomorrow. I know it's Sunday, but I still needed to sort out some paperwork at the office, so I was getting ready to head out. We might as well take action. It seems that you have already realized that adultery cannot be condoned. Frank already covers the adulterous part with clear and convincing evidence. The hardest part will be simply fighting for a financial settlement. She's also a lawyer at a big firm, so she'll have the resources to fight and stall, plus people in her firm giving her advice. "Leave it to me," Nick said. "I think we can work this out like civilized people." "Then that means you're not going to burn the bitch, but okay. We can see what you come up with." His last call was more delicate. "Hello? Maggie, this is Nick." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "Maggie, you son of a bitch! It's nice to talk to you too, honey, after all these years." "What do you want, Nick? After all this time, I need your help." "I thought Linda was your assistant." "It's about Linda. She went on a spree." "What a surprise, I really can't believe it." "Stupid. Did you realize that all this is framed in quotation marks? I can't help you emotionally or sexually these days. I am dating. And I'm sure he's a happy guy. Look, I'm really sorry. I'm sorry we fooled around and let it ruin our friendship. I'm also sorry that I let Linda kick you out of my life when I thought there was a chance that we could be friends again. But now I need your friendly help." "What do you need, Nick?" he told her. There was silence on the line, then laughter. "I agree," she said after she had calmed down, but he could still hear the smile in her voice. "You always made me laugh." "Thank you, Maggie. When the dust settles, you'll have to introduce me to Mr. Lucky so I can congratulate him on his excellent taste and invite you both to dinner." "It's a date," she said. He needed somewhere to hide for a while and plan. So he found an extended stay hotel outside the Beltway in Fairfax, far enough away from his and Linda's usual haunts where he wouldn't risk being seen, settled in, and then went to get something to eat. He wasn't actually hungry, but he knew he needed something in his stomach to fuel the alcohol he planned to drink. A restaurant called El Mariachi was across the street from the hotel. When the hostess seated him in a booth, he saw that the bartender was looking at him. He seemed vaguely familiar, but Nick put it out of his mind. At the moment, he had enough reason to worry. The menu items indicated that the restaurant was an establishment pretending to be Mexican. Most Americans didn't understand the difference. He ordered some inexpensive tequila with his meal. He knew the hangover the next day would be severe, but he considered the pain part of the cleansing ritual. The waitress returned with a bottle of excellent tequila from the top shelf. When Nick looked up at the waitress, she simply pointed to the bartender, who saluted him. Nick returned the greeting and poured himself a generous drink as the bartender returned to serving other customers. It took a moment, but Nick remembered who he was. He remembered the bartender as one of the members of the public who attended Rivera's divorce hearing, as well as the criminal trial that Nick attended. He always sat in the last row alone. No one ever sat next to him. His client's daughter, Sonia, hugged him one day, but when Nick asked Sonia who it was, she became very quiet and said he was just a family friend. Nick ate in silence, making notes on a notepad and drinking tequila. After the waitress cleared away his dirty plates, he went to the toilet. He was aware that things seemed to move around, as if he were on a ship as he walked. He needed to lean against the wall while he did his business. He then returned to the booth, trying to act as confident as possible, and found the bartender sitting in his booth on the opposite bench. "Senor Nick, good to see you," he said, reaching out to take Nick's hand and shake it vigorously. Nick sat down and waited for what he would say. "I never thanked you for helping my cousin deal with that bastard she was married to." Nick tried to argue that it was nonsense and he was just doing the little he could, but the bartender ignored him. He was severely beaten in prison. "Did you know about this?" "Very much. They don't think he'll be able to walk again or eat solid food." The bartender had a small smile on his face as he told Nick this. Nick felt a chill as he looked at the bartender. "I didn't hear that," Nick said. The bartender shrugged. "This is yesterday's news. What brought you to El Mariachi alone on a Saturday night? Where is your charming wife?" Nick looked the bartender straight in the eyes. The bartender was still smiling. It was not a mocking smile, more like a smile that knew a lot. Nick couldn't understand why he asked such a strange question. How did the bartender even know Nick was married? Nick then remembered that Linda surprised him by showing up at one of the hearings and kissed him after it was over. The bartender must have still been in the courtroom. "We have some problems with her," Nick said. He saw no reason to lie or hide information. "Like she's having fun with someone else?" Again, with a knowing smile. Nick was shocked and fell silent. "I'm not a lawyer, Don Nicholas, but I know that if you want to keep a secret, you shouldn't write it down and leave the paper in plain sight," said the bartender, pointing to Nick's notebook. It noted elements of adultery, had drawings showing Dwayne being stabbed to death, contained the name Linda surrounded by a circle with a slash, and had a to-do list that included the phrase "burn the bitch." Nick shrugged. Poor operational security, but at least it didn't give away any sensitive customer data. Any man in your situation should ask himself what he wants. What do you really want, Senor Nick? What would you want more than anything in the world, other than money, if you could choose your revenge? Nick didn't hesitate. "I want to hit her on the nose so hard that it breaks. And I want to hit her in the face so hard that both her eyes turn black. She has a very beautiful face and very expressive eyes. I want to destroy them." The bartender's smile grew wider. He then chuckled, shaking his head. "You, my friend, are not thinking rationally. People who take revenge so cruelly end up in prison. You don't want to go to jail, not unless it happens while you're visiting your clients. Right?" The bartender paused and looked slyly at Nick. Nick nodded. "But maybe I can help with something. You helped my cousin with her little problem. She could have turned to me for help, but for various reasons, she refused to do so. You, however, stepped in and took care of her." Nick tried to interrupt him. Sure, he asked Frank to gather evidence, but he made the police do all the work. It didn't hurt when Nick asked one of the partners from his firm, a former assistant United States attorney from the area, to calmly speak with the prosecutor to make sure the criminal case was getting the proper treatment. Nick showed up with his client only to make sure she had the proper respect from the prosecutor. His client's divorce itself was commonplace after her husband was convicted in a criminal case. The bartender brushed off his protests. "You must understand that helping ordinary people like my cousin is worthy of attention in itself. I am in your debt on behalf of my family. I always pay back my debts. I think you could use some help." Nick looked at him intently. "I'm afraid I don't remember your name." The bartender's smile turned into a shark-like grin. "Some people call me El Diablo." "Devil?" The bartender nodded. "That's what people who don't like me call me. To my friends, I'm Jose Garcia." Now it was Nick's turn to smile. "What should I do to receive a favor from the devil? Sell my soul?" El Diablo's smile disappeared. Nick didn't smile either. "Be serious. You are a lawyer. You have no soul." His smile returned, and Nick knew he was joking. "Call it professional courtesy, Senor Nick. Now just give me your address, your wife's name, and tell me what her daily routine is. What are you going to do?" "I have several ideas, but what does this phrase sound like? Ignorance is bliss. I think you need to be blissfully unaware and be able to report on your movements over the next few months. Buy yourself a burner phone so we can keep in touch, and leave the number here at the bar. And then don't come back here again. It will be better this way."